Alright, so it's a new day. It's a new moment for us to be together. To go with that, I got a new hat. I think I just about wore the other one out in our last videos. We've been talking about some great things. We talked about authentic faith. When we talked about authentic faith, we talked about a chair and just what that means. And this time we're going to start off with a different one. We're going to start out with one called others first. This idea of putting others before myself. What I want you to think about is a bowl. Like a bowl like you eat out of. It's that picture, that visual of us serving somebody else or helping somebody else. Maybe every time you see a bowl, whether you're at a restaurant or you're at a place to eat, that is a place to eat. You're at home getting ready for dinner, you're feeding the dog, I don't know what it may be, but when you see this bowl, maybe it'll remind you that it's your place and my place to serve others. Now, of course, on the internet, you don't find a whole lot of stories of people putting other people first. But what you can find are plenty of stories of people putting themselves first, which brings me to this crazy story that I found on the internet about a fashion company called Zara. They're from Spain, so I'm thinking they're probably pronounced Zara. Spanish-speaking people from Spain to the... So this company, Zara or Zara, has been in all kinds of hot water, lots of trouble. A couple years ago, they had an issue with making a children's t-shirt that resembled a Holocaust wardrobe. Very strange. Then they turned around last year and a woman found a dead mouse in her clothes. She purchased this dress from the company, and she was sitting at work and she realized that something was stinking and it stank, and she was like, something's wrong, and she got up, left her desk, and it kept following her around. And you know what they say, when stank follows you, it is you. She reached down to grab something. She felt something brush the side of her leg, and she reached down and grabbed her dress, and she revealed that there was a mouse that was sewn into the hem in the bottom of her dress. That's disgusting. Ended up giving her a rash from, I guess you can get a rash from dead rodents, which I'm sure it's just nasty. But more recently, this company has got a problem because one of the factories where their clothes are made, the workers there are not too happy about how they're being treated, so they put notes inside the pockets of the garments that were being made there. And the notes read, I made this item you were going to buy, but I didn't get paid for it. And so what happened was people were buying these garments and they're seeing these handwritten notes by people that were actually making the garments, and they began to contact the media, and now this company has a whole nother thing on their hands with this. When we take a step back and we look at the grand scheme of all of this, what it goes to show is that our natural inclination is to look out for ourselves at the expense of others, or at least we look at ourselves before we look at the view of others. Now, this is not what Jesus taught at all. It's not even the example that Jesus gave as he walked the earth. So for you and I, if we are people who are called to follow Jesus and called to follow Jesus' example, how do we in our lives put other people first? So as we think about this idea of others first, I want you to think about this question: am I putting the needs of others before my own? So I want us to look at a passage that we find in Micah 6:8. We'll look it up here together. It says, "Know, O people, the Lord has told you what is good." Okay, he's communicated to you that these are the things that are good for your life. And this is what he requires of you: to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. To walk humbly, not to think of yourself as better than other people, not to put yourself ahead of other people, but to walk in humility, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Now, in the Bible, we find one of those stories, and it's kind of one of those crazy stories in the Bible. In the book of Acts, there's this character called Paul, and Paul's kind of the main guy throughout the book of Acts after chapter 9. And the stories of Paul were pretty remarkable. And one of the things that Paul did was he went from place to place telling other people about Jesus. And they run across, I guess what we could best describe as like a Stranger Things kind of moment. They come across this young girl who apparently has an evil spirit residing inside of her. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, Joey, for real, evil spirit? Just follow me here, okay? So this evil spirit enables this girl to be able to tell the future. Because of this, she was made a slave, and people were using her in order to gain their own wealth. In other words, they would kind of carnival style bring her on up, and then people would she would tell their fortune, if you will. Now, Paul and Silas are kicking it. They're running around telling people about Jesus, and this girl comes up to them and starts shouting and announcing that these are people here for the Lord Most High, which kind of sounds cool, but the problem was apparently it was super annoying.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Apparently it was annoying enough where Paul was like, dude, I've had enough of this. So he turns around, and then we find in this version, it says, I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her. And immediately that spirit left her completely. Now, we would look at this story and go, oh man, that's a great story. Way to go, Paul. Great job. That's awesome. But what happened is that the people that owned this slave were super ticked off. And because all of a sudden they have lost their money. They're getting ready to lose big time in the old bank account because of what Paul has done. So here's our teaching point. Most of the time people go through life asking, what can you do for me? But from this perspective, we see people as objects. We see people as objects to help us get what we want. So, in closing up, do you look at people and you treat them as objects? Or as people that God has placed for a purpose in your life?